Looks good, feels good. My paint job pretty much sucks. Well, this is the part of the video that I had the hardest time editing. Fortunately, I was doing this with two cameras because one of my cameras crapped out halfway through. But we're going to run this at ludicrous speed, and hopefully you can get a sense for what's going on. Like I said, this machine is big and hefty, and as it turns out, it was full of water inside the main chamber, but there was also enough grease in there that I didn't really see any serious damage except on that lower worm shaft. Both ball bearings were kind of bulky, to say the least. Seized up would be a better expression. The drive housing on the side was actually pretty clean and well greased and no big problem. The unit did turn over with some difficulty when I first received it, but I think getting it cleaned up and getting the worm shaft bearings replaced turned out to be a good thing overall. And you saw in the earlier clip how easy it is to turn now. Disassembly is always a voyage of discovery as far as I'm concerned. I didn't have a manual. I later discovered a cutaway drawing, which would have been really useful as I was doing this, but it wasn't until I got trouble that I needed to look for that. But I always operate under the assumption that the engineers that designed these things had a reasonable view about how they should go together and how they should come apart. And for the most part, this really isn't terribly difficult to figure out, but every machine has its own unique characteristics and its own requirements for effective rebuilding, I guess. Well, I should probably mention this is playing about 32 times real speed, and if it seems like I'm prying pretty hard or hammering pretty hard, I can assure you that I was not. And I have to say the fits on the bearings and shafts are a lot better than what I achieve in my own efforts. They're really just a tiny bit of a press. In a lot of cases, I could get them on and off with just my fingers, but sometimes it's hard to know where to start and when to stop, I guess. One thing I wanted to mention is that this dividing head has a double enveloping worm and gear system that is kind of unusual. I haven't seen that before in the dividing heads that I've worked on. And it's a fairly complicated shape where the worm and the gear kind of wrap around each other, hence the name. And it's kind of a cool thing, but difficult to adjust and demanding from an assembly standpoint. And what the engineers at Van Norman did was they created a worm gear that's actually tapered, and it's adjusted by means of shimming which is kind of a bulletproof design, but at the same time difficult to adjust, I would think. But I'm just going to put the shims back in the same way they came out, and hopefully that'll be fine. Well, right about here is where the magic occurs, and all the parts got magically cleaned up and transferred to my overhead camera station, where it appears as though I'm going to spend the next few minutes getting the scene completely misframed. Apologies for that, but hopefully you can see enough about what's going on that you can tell what's happening. I'm not going to try to edit my way around that. I'm just making it go fast so it's over quickly. The reassembly process, I have to say, went pretty smooth with one significant exception. I'll explain it in a little bit, but I thought I had the disassembly well documented, but I had a hard time seeing one particular part, and that was a spacer on the input shaft where the worm gear resides. And as a result of that, and the fact that the double enveloping worm gear system is very sensitive to axial misalignment as well as other forms of inaccuracy, the system got tight and difficult to move. There is a point in this assembly process, I won't bother you with it, but I had it assembled correctly, and then I doubted myself, took it back apart, and put a spacer ring in the wrong place, and as a result the system got a little reluctant to rotate. Not a good thing. This is the part of the process where you realize that things have gone wrong a little, and the degree of success that you might have hoped for has eluded you somehow. And as a result, I've had to take this thing apart again a couple of times. Oddly, it gets easier the more frequently you do that, so I'm not complaining. I feel like I understand this machine pretty well now. But in the end, the problem was in the worm shaft bearing alignment laterally, because there was a spacer ring that got in the wrong place and moved the bearing and the whole shaft over, and that was enough to make it tight. This drawing shows the correct location of that spacer with the little red rings that I put on there. And I had it between the bearing and the housing, which was enough to shift that shaft about 50 thousandths. Well, that's the end of this video. Successfully concluded, in my opinion. I'm definitely happy with the way this turned out. Not without its frustrations, but always learning going forward, and more importantly, trying to avoid repeating the same mistakes. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing. If you are, please drop me a comment or any questions that you might have, and I'll take a crack at them. Thanks for watching.